why what I really want to talk about over the next 30 plus minutes, story selling, and I want to talk about influencer marketing.
So the rate of change is compounding so quickly. So I think it's important to always look at where is the source of an action or a trigger of a behavior.
It was a way to communicate those price changes or incoming price changes in a way that sort of separated us from it. It's not like, oh, Saville's raising my price on flour. There's all of these moving parts, and it fits within our content pillar, being an educational piece and building that trust.
There's an immediate trust that's given to you. Instead of having to go in that room and earn that trust in that moment, you're received like a king or a queen. Because people already have a sense of what you're about, what your values are, your insights. They feel they already have a relationship with you through your content.
You need to sit down and think about what do you want people to perceive your brand as.
Welcome to Crave, Live and Unplugged.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, let me set the stage. Deanna Segreto is the Director of Corporate Marketing at Saville Foodservice, a family-owned distributor that's been doing big things in Maryland. She's got a background in both culinary arts and business, so Johnson and Wales, because why not cook and conquer the boardroom at the same time, right? Deanna's the brains behind some bold branding moves, community impact work, and just an all-around creative force. And of course, if you want something done, you give it to the person that's busy. So as a side hustle, you're also doing your MBA right now. Yeah?
Yes.
At Boston University. But today we've got her right here in the 305, right? Is that your code in Miami?
It's
the 305, very good.
Correct.
Oh.
And we're going to have a great opportunity because what you're going to see is a toggle between Mark and Deanna, where Deanna is on the food service distribution side. Mark is what I would call on the peripheral, so will bring us some big thinking outside the food business to create that healthy tension. So if Patrick was here, it's kind of like my two AIs back and forth. So let me introduce Mark. Mark brings the perfect mix of fun, creativity, and business smarts. He's a brand strategist, creative entrepreneur, and the kind of leader who makes you believe work can actually feel like a fun day. Funny enough, his agency is called Funday. So there you go, Mark. Well done. A couple of things that I find interesting. So Mark co-founded an app with my brother, of all things, was his business partner. So I've been doing business, kind of family and business. And at one point, they were the most downloaded app in the world in 70 countries on the Apple Store. So big thinker. And has worked with brands such as HBO, Mercedes, Netflix, PepsiCo. They recently signed Denny's, so the agency of record for Denny's. So again, enough knowledge of the food business, but also coming outside our industry, which I think we need that sometime. So with that said, what I thought I would start with is you know me, I want to get to know you a little bit. What is it that you love about this industry, Deanna?
So I got into cooking because when I was 3, I was diagnosed with celiac disease. They probably should have diagnosed me with stubbornness because that sort of led me to want to eat what everyone else was eating. And that's how I pursued food. I liked the community and the inclusivity that happens when you're sharing a meal with someone. And I was sort of outside of that because of celiac disease. That just means I'm allergic to gluten. I'm not contagious.
Well done. So it's obviously near and dear to your heart.
It is, absolutely.
Very good. And Mark, I would consider you a modern day storyteller, whether it's some of the work you do. What is it that you love about your craft, about trying to find these stories and trying to really connect? What is it that you love about that?
I think storytelling is a very human thing, right? Like we learn through stories. We've been learning through storytelling since the dawn of time, right? And I think most of us, when we look at things from a consumer perspective, you know, we rationalize our feelings to make decisions, right? So you need to tell stories that have some kind of an emotional resonance. And a lot of when we tie storytelling back to marketing, it tends to sometimes fall into a lot of measurement and KPIs and OKRs and, you know, fill in more acronyms, which are critical and are part of your overall kind of system organization structuring. But we can't forget about the fact that stories are about what? Making people feel something. And often I'm in marketing meetings, and I introduce myself as Mark from marketing. It sometimes gets a laugh, sometimes. And I'm like, hey, how come we haven't talked about any feelings and how your customer is meant to feel, right? Because when I leave a conference, I'm going to forget a lot of the data we shared, but I'm going to remember a feeling, that I have a good feeling today on the panel, that I have a good feeling being part of this association. And then that recall is going to greatly influence whether or not I want to come back and et cetera, and create that engagement and that loyalty and that continuity. So it's, well, and I've heard a lot of this from some of you the last couple of days, it really comes down to relationship building. But how do we build relationship? Well, we sit down, we tell stories. We break bread, we tell stories. Family stories, professional stories, highs and lows, wins and losses, right?
Well,
so that's why I love stories, because it's so human. Sorry.
And Mark, if you think of Maya Angelou's famous quote, people forget what you said, they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
And that's why what I really want to talk about over the next 30 plus minutes is around story selling. So what does that look like today? The big, story selling. Then I want to talk about influencer marketing, whether you're a DSR, how do you create a brand for yourself, whether you're the marketing team supporting, whether you're the DSM. And obviously I want to hear some ideas and I want to unpack it together. So why don't we just start with story selling? What does that mean to you? And what does it look like today?
Sure. So we've been talking a lot today about the changing social media sort of ecosystem. And the biggest overlap that we're seeing right now is a customer will have a TikTok influencer review them and then go viral. So we've started doing legendary win stories at our sales meetings to sort of go over that. And recently we actually had a Barstool review, which was great for the customer, but it sort of puts it into our sales reps' minds that this is a real opportunity for our customers. So, if you connect with the local influencers, maybe you DM them your new customer, say, hey, you got to check this out. They don't know you're a sales rep necessarily, but we're seeing a lot of value in that. And being in the DC region, we have a lot of very popular influencers. So they're a great asset, and they're also a great asset to invite to your food show. If you become friends with them, it's free content, and they're going to be the ones filming all your stuff. It's great content for them. But just on the sales rep side, it's just putting them in a position to come to marketing to have us tell those stories or help them do something that sort of goes above and beyond customer service, right? Like if a customer is nominated for an award with a local trade organization, we've done this. We made them custom t-shirts. We drew their logo, we sketched a sandwich, and then we have a photo op of them with that. And it's that sort of viral community marketing that we're able to do as a family-owned independent.
When I think of story selling, I think, how do you avoid being transactional in your storytelling? I've been hearing a lot of folks talk about tech is coming. There's a lot of modernization that's occurring in the space, which I think is great, by the way. And what I find it's taking away a lot of the stuff that's a little redundant and a little repetitive that, quite frankly, anyone here can do, right? Because it's transactional work, and so we shouldn't really fear that. But what that does is I think that creates this whole other opportunity to really connect on, if you look at your customer journey or touch points, what are all these humanistic touch points that are critical in the decision-making matrix of your customer, your buyer, whoever that is? Identify those, and how do we connect on a human level there to help solve a problem, help move the business forward, right? A lot of people here, it's funny, some of the best sales folks at Funday agency, they're not traditional salespeople. They're ex-strategists, ex-brand experts, art directors. Because when they speak to the customer, they go into, and I feel as a society we've lost this a little bit. I'm going to drop the N-word, so don't panic. Nuance. We lose so much nuance because headlines, we go into polarities of things, right? Let's look at things politically, for example. And so, as a salesperson, or in the context of story selling, if I'm able to, because selling has this, again, I'm trying to trick you a little bit, right? I'm trying to kind of get something, to maximize margins or get an extra. And nobody likes to get tricked, right? Feels like a betrayal, feels dishonest. When I'm operating with my third-party partners, I want to see them as allies. I want to see them almost as an extension of my business.
When they do well, we do well, right? So even it's transactional, but it's grounded in supporting them and supporting their business. So in about 2021, I found a wonderful influencer in DC who I sort of just reached out and said, hey, we have a lot of customers who aren't really online. What advice would you give them just getting out there, maybe getting on Google My Business? And she was lovely, and she made a best practices guide, and we still have it, and we still send that out to customers who maybe just don't have that. A lot of customers don't know, the checkbox of how to get on the internet, but.
Well, to build a bridge, because we've talked a lot about AI, so here's where I think a lot of us, guilty, even though I teach this stuff, is the algorithm, so AI,
right.
If that's my first start point and I'm not starting with Google, it's going to reward content that's coming from LinkedIn, Insta, TikTok. Yep. So let's bucket that under story selling. I'd love to get Mark, maybe take a crack at it. And then.
But Julian said something really important there.
Why was it important? Tell me more, Mark. That makes me feel good.
You're very important. I mean, I think, was it you or Steve Jobs that said that? I always confuse Julian with Steve Jobs. What did he say?
I should not have brought a friend on stage.
The storyteller is the most powerful person in the room, right? So I don't know. Was it Steve? Was it Jules? I'm not sure. You always have to look at where the attention is and where the behavior is. So don't fear the change, but be one with the change, because eventually you're going to be left behind, not to be all scary, but I mean, that's kind of how things operate, right? And so from an algorithm perspective, yes, there's a huge shift in search right now. Who would have thought that Google might be in some form of threat or danger? But right now, OpenAI as a platform, I think, ranks in the top 5 most visited platforms on Earth. 24 months ago, nobody was talking, right? So the rate of change is compounding so quickly. And so I think it's important to always look at where is the source of an action or a trigger of a behavior, right? But to your point, we're telling a lot of our clients now, you have to make sure that you're properly indexed into the OpenAIs of the world, the Claudes, the et cetera, because users are starting there. This reminds me 10 years ago when I was telling folks, I was like, what's your mobile strategy? They're like, mobile? TV's where it's at. I'm like, not anymore. You want to allocate a certain budget to television for awareness building, et cetera, but you better start diversifying your investment into mobile advertising, because 90% of a first touch point with any type of product, service, from orange juice to astronomy, is happening on a mobile device. So if you as a business, as a brand, you don't have a presence that resonates or that's accessible, you don't exist. And if you don't exist, you have little relevancy in a capitalist system from a business perspective, of course, right? And so you have to maintain that relevancy and adapt. Where are people looking for the stories? Where is their starting touch point? So when you're thinking of a funnel, right, where does the customer start and look to discover you? AI, which is part of the Web3 movement, is now the new Meta, the new Facebook, the new social, right? It's the new television.
People's best friends at this point. It's their best friends at this point. Wild.
It really is.
On the food service side, as many of you probably know, if you're in marketing, you're marketing to someone that has opposite hours to the average consumer. Their days off are not the typical consumer, or they might not even be a social user. Restaurant decision makers just don't fit the typical mold, and I always found that sort of an interesting marketing challenge to try to get them. One thing I did when I first started at Saville was polled our email list. I just sent out an email and a poll and said, what type of content and how frequently do you want it? And I was shocked by the results that most of them wanted weekly emails with new products, produce updates, I don't know, anything fun. And I think we went from, we need to just jump on maybe LinkedIn, and then completely shifted to email. So food service is also very regional. Someone in Idaho may have completely different decision maker habits, and it's great now that we have access to this data, both as the person sourcing a food service distributor, but also being the distributor. I can use ChatGPT, feed it a ton of my data, and say, where do I have an opportunity here? Where do I have a void?
But there's an interesting theme here on what's old is new again. And I was listening, funny enough that we're in Miami. There was an influencer in Miami that got suspended from TikTok, violation, 10 million followers he had, and now literally he's working again. I mean, he's no longer on his yacht that he was probably renting and taking pictures like we saw last night.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't have any email because he's a new age marketer and everything relied on it. So there is something to be said with still having that email touch point. If you had 50 chefs in your network, yes, you're going to engage with them on social, but how do you have a traditional relationship too?
Right. I mean, the power is in the data. I think there was an article in The Economist recently that China is very aware of the power of data and how to harness it. But we have a ton of data, as most of you do. Maybe you're looking at it, maybe you're not. But also check your privacy laws in your state data. Throwing that out there. But there's so many nuggets in there that AI is great at revealing. But to your point about what old is new, I can only speak for our customers. They love emails. They love it because it's part of their workflow when they're about to order. And now that we have like clickable links, we can also sort of exploit that like checkout impulse thing. Like I think you worked with 7-Eleven too, so you know the marketing of like having the hot dog right at the counter because you're like, maybe I do want that.
And not always super directly or clearly, but if you're listening and you're paying attention, they will tell you what's lacking, and then you adapt your communication strategies accordingly. With 7-Eleven, we were preparing the summer campaigns. Anyone ever here had a Slurpee? Slurpees, yes? Excited? A lot of sugar.
Yeah,
I know,
Slurpee.
not the best thing, but
Slurpees for everybody.
but they're fantastic. Yeah, bring out the Slurpees for next year.
There you go.
Maybe get
We just
7-Eleven
got
as
a
a sponsor.
sponsor.
I don't
There you
know.
go.
Maybe.
Well
Well,
done.
guys, let's see. We're already brainstorming. We're creating revenue opportunities. And so we ran this survey with a lot of their audiences, and we noticed, obviously Slurpee is spelled with 2 E's. So we would drop this kind of interesting language with 2 E's, and we would just ask that audience, like, what brand you kind of connect this stuff to? And everyone was like, oh, this is like so 7-Eleven because of like these 2 E's. So we created this entire linguistic ecosystem, summary. We're going to have a Slurpee summary, experience, and everything from the ads, the billboards, the email campaigns, lean into this kind of double E. We put basically double E's after every single word. And there was such a strong resonance because we build the entire story from a feeling that we got from a data point, from an insight, from a series of systematic strategic pollings and conversations. So then we were like, okay, let's go big on this, right? Let's spend the money, let's build the awareness. And the reason why we focus so much on Slurpee is because it's the gateway into everything else. It's summer, it's hot, I want a Slurpee, I get in the store, now I get upsold a bunch of other stuff. So it's that kind of almost like loss leader that we use also from a cultural standpoint to get everybody sort of in the door.
So just kind of to build a bridge, so we've talked about storytelling at 30,000 feet. We're now starting to talk about data. I want to get into some usage, case studies, examples that I put myself in the shoes of the participants and the people listening to this podcast after the fact. So let's talk influencer marketing. Because I think everybody here, by the way, is good at telling a story if you're passionate about it. I always love people say I'm not great at storytelling, and I ask you about your kids or I ask you about your favorite sports team and you light up. And then you go in the boardroom and you become this robot, right? So I believe all of us are influencers in some shape or form. All of us can build a personal brand. I'd love to get examples, and I know, Mark, you've got some examples outside the food business, and we've talked, Deanna, around some examples. So give me an example maybe of someone that's on your team or someone that you think is doing a good job influencing.
Sure. So we have a sales rep, shout out Johnny Duggar, who in COVID, I think he was like a bartender, and he started a Facebook page called Northern Virginia Foodies, I believe it's called, and it has thousands of people on it. And he's continued to use it to shout out Saville customers. He has a ridiculous following. And I talk about, sales reps engaging in this. And when they're onboarded, I get them. They get like a little Deanna briefing. But I say, if you're not social media literate, don't force it, is my caveat. I think it's very transparent when someone doesn't know what they're doing, and it doesn't look great on your brand, and also screenshots are forever and embarrassing. But no, we have a couple reps that do a great job, like always sort of supporting and doing reciprocal posting, or always letting me know when they're having a fundraiser. So we'll support their press release about it. But it's changing a lot too as we're hiring more reps and sort of the generations are shifting, that social media literacy and that personal branding has like taken hold.
And look, obviously I think you're doing a great job. In preparation, I looked at your newsletter. You've got a podcast. Obviously, I've looked at a lot of your newsletters, podcasts. So we have these tools. The question is, how are you sharing it and to who are you sharing it to?
Right.
It was mentioned in the last session, the golden rule, the platinum rule. I heard a good one the other day. Someone said, Julian, what's the titanium rule? I was like, wow, some people have way too much time.
There's always another level, guys.
There's a level up. But what they said got me thinking. The titanium rule, you're going to love this, is imagine treating others better than they expect to be treated. So if the golden rule is you treat others the way you want to be treated, platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. But the only way you can treat them better than they expect to be treated is you better have a connection.
Right.
There better be some trust. There you go.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that as an aside. But let's go to influencer marketing. You've got a great example, Mark, in another industry that you would never think that someone would pop up as an influencer. So tell us about Henry's
financial
story.
Services. Really exciting, right? So a good friend of mine called me years ago, like 2014, 2015. He was working for a big bank at the time, and he's like, I think I'm going to switch and work for PwC, and I think I'm going to get into cryptocurrencies and basically, all things pertaining to the blockchain, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, I want to become kind of an authority, an expert. He studied in Hong Kong and all this kind of great stuff and has a great wealth of knowledge. And he's like, well, how do I start? What do I do? I said, well, let's look at the industry and let's look at where are some of the gaps. What are important things to people? Well, we noticed that in this particular vertical, there was so much happening with Bitcoin and all this kind of stuff, and no one was really recapping or telling these stories, right? Mainstream news was a little iffy, and people were kind of staying away from it. So I said, well, here seems to be an opportunity, right? What I like to refer as a blue ocean. Red ocean means a lot of sharks. Blue ocean means a lot of opportunity. I said, well, what if you just start like doing this 60-second kind of weekly kind of recap of what's happening in the news kind of cycle? No major production, just keep it very simple. Take your phone, talk to in 60 seconds. Hi, I'm Henry, and this week we noticed, and just go through it. So he starts doing this. Week 1, 2, 4 months, 6 months, few followers, a year. 6, 7 years later now, I think he's got 1 million followers. He charges tens of thousands of dollars per speech. Incredible halo effect for PwC in terms of credibility. And I know, anybody watch a little tennis? Wimbledon? Anyone?
Yes.
Just finished this weekend, right? It's sort of, I compare this like when you start building a bit of like your own brand, it's sort of like walking on a tennis court and you're up 15 love, 30 love. Because there's an immediate trust that's given to you. Instead of having to go in that room and earn that trust in that moment, you're received like a king or a queen. Because people already have a sense of what you're about, what your values are, your insights. They feel they already have a relationship with you through your content. So we started in a very focused way with this one beachhead called the Crypto Capsule. If you guys want to check it out, it's great. And then as that got bigger and bigger, we then diversified into, well, hey, let's start inviting all these CEOs in the space and having conversations about the ecosystem. What's working, what's not, what's keeping you up at night, what's bothering you, right? All this kind of stuff. Which is also great for business because now you've got every major CEO in the crypto space come in on your podcast, which is fantastic. Building more credibility. Now you're writing books. Now we're investing in companies. Now you started his own fund. And again, that's his unique particular path, right? I think step one is how can you best serve your community, your customer, and your employer. It's all a cohesive partnership that's occurring. So start really simple. And for some people, it's video, it's camera that works. For others, it's the written word.
Ours is a podcast.
Podcast
3
content?
minutes long, and it's just the
3
market
minutes.
trends.
I love it.
Yeah, it's 3 to 5. Depends on how much is going on in the corn, but it was started in 2020 because we were seeing a lot of price increases, and the commodity market is fascinating. And it was a way to communicate those price changes or incoming price changes in a way that sort of separated us from it. It's not like, oh, Saville's raising my price on flour. There's all of these moving parts, and it sort of hits within our content pillar of being an educational piece and building that trust, which, as many of you know here, like food service operators, it's all about price. It's about getting what they need when they need it. And it's about systems that work for them in a trusting environment. So it worked out really well for us.
But why don't we tell more stories about the transparency in those systems? And in that, I'm sure there's a lot of buyers that don't realize what suppliers go through, right? Like what happens on the farm and that entire process when a product gets into someone's kitchen. I mean, the amount of story opportunities that you have in there are incredible. And the overarching theme, and I learned this from Deborah Wall, who's the ex-chief marketing officer at General Motors. She told me this a couple years ago. We were actually in Miami together for Brand Week, and she's like, you want your stories fundamentally, and pretty much all your interactions externally, as internally, to be rooted in trust. Trust has to be at the center of all your interactions. If all your activities and your stories and those are not building trust, you're doing something fundamentally wrong, right? Trust at the heart of every interaction. That always stayed with me. We brought that to our companies at Funday, to our clients.
One key takeaway I would, leave you with today, or I have two, I lied, is poll. If you use any mass emailer, there's likely a polling tool. You're going to be surprised by how many customers want to give you their opinion. It might not be great. They might be like, your emails suck, or there's too many. That's still great feedback. And then the other thing is to sort of insert yourself into the bubble of your potential customers. We all are so in our algorithm bubbles, like mine is not yours or yours. And your phone, unfortunately, can track your eye movement to see what you're laughing at. So if you laugh at a frog video, you're going to get more. Maybe that happened to me, I'm not sure. I cleansed it from my feed.
You talking about Pepe here? Or?
No, it was just frogs.
Got it. Pepe's a controversial figure in the crypto world.
But you need to follow your customers on social media. See what they're posting. See who they're following. See who's commenting. Follow those people. When I started at Saville, I used to call it being creepy, and that's how I sort of would get people to understand how it works to sort of build your sphere. But it's hard for you to know what's trending or what they think is funny, or maybe you don't know that they're closed today because there was, a window broke or something. It's very important to just put yourself in the sphere, and then you're more prepared to tell your story, right? And a key part of this and an underlying thread is that you need to sit down and think about, what do you want people to perceive your brand as, your company's brand?
There's so much opportunity. And so when an industry's changing, things are a little lagging, things are just, okay, great. Who's the person that's going to connect these, unify these things? Who's going to provide clarity or light in the dark?
I think what you're saying is there's some quick wins we can go get as well, which is, hey, reshare content. Get yourself in a community that you want to be part of and be part of the conversation. Now, I do know that the conversation will keep going after this podcast, so they're going to stick around. Please track them down, ask them questions. But I do want to finish because I've got a formula for the podcast, and I want to hear quickly mentorship. Do you have a mentor, Deanna, that you would say, this person has helped me with what?
I would say Paul Saville, and I'm not just sucking up. He is our CEO, but he's a very good active listener. And sometimes when people are talking, I'm already thinking of solutions, and he is always very good to just slow down and listen. So I would say Paul Saville.
Well, look, anybody that will listen aggressively in 2025 has separated themselves from the rest of the planet.
Truly.
So good for Paul. He's figured out what leadership's all about.
Truly.
Mark, is there a mentor that jumps to mind?
That wasn't the question we agreed on backstage.
That's okay.
I like raw. I will give you the last question with the word. Do you have a mentor? Just answer the question.
Do I have a mentor this very second?
No, none of this hand stuff. Do you have a mentor? Tell us who your mentor is.
I don't have a mentor at this moment, no. But you know what? When I started Flixo.com, your brother and I had a great mentor. This gentleman by the name of Ken Nickerson. And Ken was a really cool guy because he worked for Microsoft. He worked very closely with Bill Gates. And I don't know if you guys remember, but because we have a lot of generations here, but in the 80s, Microsoft had basically like a monopoly on the game, right? So Microsoft had to make an investment into Apple, and there's this famous they're at the big conference and Steve is talking on stage, and then he brings Bill on, everyone boos and F you, and right, because it's Microsoft and Apple, two sort of opposites, right? Paradox. But Ken was in the room during those meetings, advising on the strategery, the thinking, like the times, everything from the legislative landscape is changing. We need to last for decades to come. We got to be smart here. So him informing us on think about it. That's a historical moment to be in the room with those minds and those heavyweights. Right. So he really, he showed us a lot of how to think and how to operate and also how not to overthink. At speed. Take action. The more you take action, the more you get data. The more you get data, the more you iterate, the more you pivot, the more you keep going. Stillness is a killer.
And this was the one that I did give you both a chance to reflect on. I took Patrick, I didn't give him a chance. So 30 seconds each. You had a t-shirt. What word do you choose to describe who you are as a leader and why?
So I'm a millennial, as Lisa very accurately sort of put me in that box. So I cheated and I asked my team.
Oh, very good. Good on you.
Who are coincidentally also all millennials. They're all in different departments, but the word was supportive. And I think that fits with the millennial archetype of wanting to give them the space and the agency to suggest improvements and not fall into sort of that millennial cubbyhole in other ways of not speaking up and striving for efficiencies or generating ideas and just being there as a supportive leader.
Love that t-shirt.
That's great.
But I did cheat.
Love the t-shirt. What color would the t-shirt be? And would you
do we have a logo?
What are we doing with this
I'm
t-shirt?
thinking like an aquamarine tie-dye.
Okay, very good. Good visual. Mark, what's your word and why?
I'm going to go with 2 words. I'm going to mix it up here. I'm going to break the
that?
rules.
No, Mark, 1 word, please.
Collaborative and creative. That's what I would say.
Fair enough. Front of the t-shirt, back of the t-shirt.
Collaboration. You can't do anything by yourself. And as a leader, it's all about building community. You need a team. Everything's about team. Different roles and balance. And I like what you said, support, meaning you got to listen, you got to be empathetic, but there needs to be a vision. You got to set a vision as well, right? And everyone needs to buy in, and then we all row in one direction. That increases our chances for success.
And look, a final thought for all of us. Obviously, we're all storytellers. We wanted to bring 2 people on stage that were passionate about it, that are spending a lot of time in it. I always say the day you think you're an expert, you're probably screwed, so it's a craft. It's changing. As we're having this conversation, there's something that's changing probably with the algorithm. So with that said, let's give them a huge round of applause. And thank you for engaging with us. And for those of you listening to this after the fact, congratulations, you're part of this great IFDA community. So well done.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Cut & Dry, the only independently verified digital ordering platform that combines e-commerce, payments, and sales tools to help food service distributors sell over 10% more cases within a year. Here's the truth. E-commerce isn't just about going digital. It's about getting discovered. That's why, since 2009, Cut & Dry has led the industry in transforming your inventory into online custom apps that are easy to search, explore, and for your customers to uncover new products. Join us today at cutandDry.com.